everybody, my ladies and gentlemen that are out there listening. Um, I want you to be very welcoming to our special guest, Kelle Sparta, because she's known for her incredible work as a spiritual coach and a shaman. And she has guided countless individuals on their journey to personal and spiritual growth. And today she's here to share her insights on how we can enhance our emotional and spiritual well-being. So, hi, Kelle. Welcome
Hi,
to the
Mimi.
show.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Oh yeah, I was looking forward to this. There's a lot of things that I want to find out from you. First of
Awesome. I'm happy to answer whatever questions you have.
all right. So, yeah, my listeners tell me they like this show because I always have diversity as far as topics. I every kind of topic there is, so they like that. And so for those people that do listen that are not really into certain types of things, can you explain what a shaman is? Can you define that for them?
I get asked this question a lot, and I'm going to give you my standard answer, which is if you ask 100 shamans what a shaman is, you're going to get 100 different answers. And the reason for that is that every shaman's path is different and they all have different gifts and they all have
Yes.
different focuses, right? So,
Hmm.
one of the things that I find kind of frustrating right now is that a lot of people have associated shamanism and plant medicine and say, all shamans do plant medicine, which is not true. I don't do plant medicine. It's not what I do. I don't have anything against it, but it's just not my thing, right?
Yeah.
And so, for me, I am actually specifically a transformational shaman, which
Okay.
means I stand at the doorway of initiation from one state of evolution to the next, and I help you cross the threshold. And so,
Okay. Yeah, and
yeah.
I get that because I am on a journey and I know that I am headed, well, I have been headed since 2020, 2021 on a specific mission that I had never explored the way I am now. I mean, 5 years ago, I did not have 4 books, a podcast, and a YouTube show. So I understand totally about that, but I also want to expand more myself. So how about your journey? How did you become a coach for other spiritual practitioners?
Well, so I've been doing this for as long as I can remember. I actually have high school yearbook signatures that read like client testimonials. My mother started me in this when I was 5 years old. She said I was talking to ghosts in my crib. And so she was committed to making sure that I got training for it.
Oh,
And so I've been doing this for 50 years now, which is a really long time. And so as I have moved through my work, more people who are further along on the journey have started to come to me and be like, okay, now what? Right? Because, there's a lot of beginner work out there. And a lot of people teaching that, but there are very few people teaching more advanced level skills. And
yeah.
so I tend to get a fair number of the people who are like, okay, I've finished my sort of basic levels, and now I want to understand, how does the energetic world work? What goes on with it? It's so funny because when I started my podcast in 2018, I've got a podcast called Spirit Sherpa. I started it and it was actually literally branded as the beginner's guide to energy magic in the spirit world. And the weirdest thing happened about 2 or 3 months in. All my friends who are much further along in their journeys came to me and went, "Oh my God, I love your podcast." And I'm like, "Why would you love my podcast? It's a beginner's podcast. What are you
Yeah.
getting out of it?" And they said, "You're taking every 2 hour class I've ever taken in my life and stitching it together into a big world picture."
Oh, okay.
And I didn't realize I was doing it. It's how it works in my head, but I didn't know I was doing it, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've heard the term like light workers or spiritual um, guides and empaths and all
Mhm.
different kinds of terms. Um,
Yes.
and I think they all are saying that these people have a special gift, which you had since you were a baby, obviously.
Yes.
And sometimes that special gift, you don't know you have it for a long time. Like in
Yeah.
my case, I did not know. but I had a lot of barriers and obstacles and things in my life going on. And I was literally just trying to survive. And then I did get to a point where I start looking at that spiritual side and realized that I did attract people to me all the time. I just was attracted. People would come to me and they would ask me a question, and I was like, why do they keep calling me like you? Like, why do they keep calling me? Why do they think I know everything? And but I started to feel that need to. My mission was at first to empower women. So that's why I started out at ACT. And I'll tell you a story later about that and how I had to broaden it. But I don't want it to be all about me. I want it to be about you. So, um, but the business part of it. So how did you get inspired to combine that spiritual and business coaching in your practice?
Well, it's these are the two things I've studied my whole life, right? My mother started her first business when I was 13. And I helped her. So this is back in the age where when you wanted to program a computer, you would do punch cards, right? And so I did the programming for her computer for her home healthcare agency, and I was her receptionist for 6 months. And I was just like, I got the business bug very early. I helped her design learning courses, because she was a teacher, and a nurse, and the only two professions women were allowed at the time. And well, secretary. She was never a secretary, but I helped her with that. And then when I was in college, a friend of mine went on an early version of Prozac, and she was running a company I worked for, and she just lost her mind and went and ran away from the business and left me. And I'm like 19 years old, scrambling, trying to run this business. And suddenly I'm reading all these books and trying to consume enough information to really try to figure out what I'm doing so I can, keep her business afloat while she's wandering off. And so that began what was a lifelong love affair with business. And I have been running businesses and consulting with businesses for years. I was a real estate agent and a manager, and I helped recruit agents and teach them how to sell and all of those things. And then I moved into, straight business consulting, and I did a lot of that. And the whole time I'm quietly in the background doing the spiritual coaching too, because in like 1998, 99, you didn't say this stuff out loud, right? It was not allowed. I called myself a business shaman in 2005, and you could have heard a pin drop in the room. People were not impressed.
Oh, of
So,
course.
it's been something that over the years I have been able to bring more and more to the forefront of what I do, because it's become more and more mainstream. So, and people are waking up at faster rates and further along the path than ever before. So I had somebody yesterday that I was on the phone with who is like, I had this awakening and things are happening and I don't have words for them, and something's chewing on me and I can tell it is, but I don't want people to think I'm nuts and I don't want to talk to them about it. And I'm like, look, girlfriend, you tell me whatever you need to tell me, because my level of weird is way higher than yours. Just bring it. She was just
Yeah,
like so relieved,
yeah,
because she just didn't have a point of reference, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
this is the sort of thing that I'm seeing more and more in the last like 3 or 4 years, right? Ever since COVID, right?
Yes,
COVID was a mass hermitage. Everyone was forced into a hermitage,
absolutely.
and we're all evolving as a result of that.
2020, I was recovering from breast cancer. I also have an autoimmune disease, and my husband has Parkinson's, and we are in our 70s. So we made the decision because they did not know. If they did know, they weren't telling us how you were getting it or whatever. We made the decision to stay home.
Yeah.
And being a caretaker and not leaving that house,
Hmm.
I was diagnosed with chronic depression and anxiety when I got sober 33 years ago. They said, you have been self-medicating
Right.
that. So, of course, my depression woke up, and I knew it because I started being mean to my husband. And I know a lot about depression, and that's one of the signs. And so I got help. And I got a therapist that was trying to help me with the fact that my husband was getting very nonverbal after a certain time of day. And I couldn't handle it. I'm a talker. I couldn't handle it. So I get no responses from him. If I ask him a question or said something, I get no response. She said, go in your room, shut the door, and why don't you start writing? I said, I'm not a writer. She said, can you type? I said, yes. She said, well, just start whatever. And I ended up writing a book, Raised by Wolves, Trapped by Demons. The wolves were my parents, and the demons were the men that in my life that I thought I could escape from the wolves. No. But in writing that book, which I would not have written if it wasn't for 2020, um, I saw the patterns. I saw things in my life that stopped me from being the full person that I'm supposed to be, my potential. And then it all started opening up. Like you said, I started having feelings. I started having these ideas, and yeah, that was a great, 2020 people say, oh, a terrible year, but it caused a lot of good things. This is one of them, Zoom.
Absolutely. And I
So,
saw that a lot. The 2020 was when you look at, and I talk to a lot of people because I have a lot of friends in this industry. And I talked to all of them, and 2020 was record years for all of them because so many people were not able to, be with themselves and they needed to be with someone and they couldn't get therapy because the therapists were completely flat up. Right. They were flat out. There was no time. Poor therapists. I felt so bad for them in 2020
yeah,
because they were just, they got no breaks. And so a lot of people were coming into the spiritual world and looking at spiritual coaching and spiritual teachers and meditative practices and things like that. And
yeah.
so it was a huge influx of people into the spiritual world. And so that was huge. Yeah.
And the way you get there, everybody gets there in a different way. Um, I mentioned sobriety. Okay, so I'm in AA. I had a few years in AA. I was married to my third husband, which I'm with 37 years. So that tells you it was the other guy, not me, you know. So I would say that. Anyway, because of the being sober and being around spiritual people, because at this time, this was in the 90s, the late 90s, they were getting into Deepak Chopra and Marianne Williamson and Wayne Dwyer. And this one group had a series of speakers, and they were three of the speakers. And I literally got to meet all three of them and
You got
talk
to meet
to.
Wayne Dyer? I'm so jealous. I
Oh,
I talk to him all the time on the other side, but
okay.
I
Tell
never
me I
got to
said
meet him in
hello.
person.
You tell him I said hello, and I'll tell you
I
why.
will.
When he did his thing, he said, okay, is anybody in the room divorced? And before I could put my hand up, my husband said, yeah, her 3 times. Because one guy I married twice. So I
Okay.
divorced him twice. So Wayne Dwyer goes, oh, I want you. Come up here. I was on a stage with him. Okay.
Wow.
And he did this thing with an envelope, and he had me hold it in my hand. And he said, now don't let me push your hand out. And he pushed my hand down. And I thought, oh boy, I'm that weak. So, and then he gave me a different envelope. Same thing. Don't let me push your hand down. And this time I didn't. So then he took the envelope that made me weak and he opened it, and there was sweet and low in there.
There was
Because
what?
sweet and low, the
The
lucky
artificial sweetener. Yeah.
artificial sweetener.
Yeah.
And that was this point that the things we put in our body weaken us and everything. And then he went on. But he was
What was
lovely.
in the other envelope?
Nothing.
Nothing. Oh, okay.
Nothing. It was nothing. So anyway, I got to meet him. And then Deepak, really quickly, this is kind of sad. My son-in-law unfortunately overdosed and died while watching his 4-year-old son. which is very tragic because his 4-year-old son had to get help, you
Right.
know. And it happened when we were a few days before Deepak, and I wasn't going to go. And my friend said, all the more reason to go. And
Yeah.
I did go. And we get in the elevator to go to the private, we paid extra to meet everybody. And the door opened, and there was Deepak. And it was just like, he was just like leaning against the wall, like so cool. He looked so cool. He was so cool. And I don't know what got into me, but I told him. I told him what just happened. And he autographed a book for my daughter. And when he did his talk, I swear to God, he looked right at me. And
Wow.
his talk was for me. Trust me.
Awesome.
And he talked about synchronicity and a lot of things that I had never really thought about. So I had a good experience with all those. So that led me, that long story, but that led me into the next part, right, of the journey.
Mhm.
The sobriety had to be there first because I wasn't awake.
Mhm.
You know, if you're in addiction, you're not gonna, how are you going to get spiritual, right? So
Absolutely.
that's how I made a turn. So how did you let's see, your clients, they have blocks in their mind or their soul or whatever that is hurting their businesses or how they work their businesses.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of work with my clients around their inner blocks. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at the chakra system and I'm looking at their auras and looking at what the outside influences are. And I've done over 3,000 of these energy reviews. And um, what I learned in the course of those reviews is that everyone on a spiritual path has some of 40 blocks that I have identified as being common amongst the people who are on a spiritual path. Nobody has all of them, but
Oh,
everybody has some of them. And I and all of the readings I've done, that has always been proven to be true. So, and I've
really?
even taught other people how to do this, and they're doing this, and they haven't come back and said, "Well, somebody didn't have any of the blocks," and because that's just these are the common things that we're dealing with on the planet.
All right, give me 5.
Five. Okay. So one of the most interesting ones is what I call being in the energetic fetal position. And so what that means is that your root and your crown chakras are closed. And it's a response that's supposed to be an emergency response to stress and attack. And we close down to keep people outside of our energy field, right?
Yeah.
And because of that, you don't have access to energies outside of yourself. And so it's only supposed to last for like 15 minutes or so and then open back up again. But if you live in an environment for a long period where you're unsafe all the time, that becomes an ingrained pattern. And this is how energy vampires are born because they shut down their crown and root. They
Yeah.
don't have access to the outside world. And so they have to steal energy from other people to get energy. And it's a
Wow.
very simple fix. All you got to do is just open the crown and root again. In fact, on my YouTube channel, there's a tree meditation that will, if you do that for 3, 4 times a day for, 4 to 6 weeks, it'll be open and it'll stay open. And it will only close when you go back into an unsafe space, right? So
I,
that's
that's
one. Yeah,
okay.
which I think is super interesting, right?
Oh, that
Uh,
fits me, definitely. I was stressed out for 40 years
yeah,
and unsafe. All right, so go to
yeah.
2. Go to 2.
So, and this isn't a block so much as a common way that people hold their energy field. And so, empaths in particular, and people who have stressful environments like this, we all become empaths because it's a coping mechanism we develop to be able to monitor the people around us so that we know if something's going to come at our face, right? And so, what that is we shove our energy fields out to the edges of the room or the building, or for some unfortunate people, the earth, and then we are able to monitor everything, but we're also subject to everything. So there are people wandering through our energy fields. If we go into large groups, it's very overwhelming. If somebody is having really strong emotions, And then we don't know if they're their emotions or our emotions, and we're not sure how we feel because and it's overwhelming because they're having big emotions and we don't get any control over that. And so yeah, it's problematic. And so I actually have a free download on my website that is called Boundaries for Empaths that is
Oh, I need
for
that.
that.
I need.
And if you just go to kellesparta.com and click on the blog section on the right-hand side, it says Boundaries for Empaths, and it's a free e-course. But it
Yeah.
shows you how to change that so that you never have to experience that again. It's also why you have a hard time breaking up with people. You said you went back to your ex-husband, right?
I married him twice.
Yeah. So what happens as an empath is we don't cord. You know how people talk about energetic cording, where you plug a cord into somebody else. We don't cord as empaths. We mix our energy fields.
Mm.
And because we mix our energy fields, we end up when we try to separate from somebody, we end up with some of them in our field and some of them in us in their field. And then it's very hard to stay apart because you're missing parts of yourself.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
And so there's a whole process for filtering your energy back to yourself and theirs back to them. And this is particularly important. And I'm going to say this out loud to you here. So I have a friend whose husband was dying of Parkinson's. And as he was starting to pass, she was fading. And I looked at her and I said, "You have got to pull your energy back from him because he will take you to the other side if you let him." And you guys are too intertwined energetically. And the two of them, being brilliantly conscious people, chose to pull their energies back. I showed them how to do it. She pinked up again, and he was able to cross without her being impacted physically by it. She was obviously emotionally impacted because they've been together for decades. But she was not going to be. This is why people get pulled over and they say, "Oh, they died of a broken heart." No, they died of being an empath. Okay. They died because a significant enough portion of their energy was pulled to the other side that they had no choice but to follow.
Wow, that makes sense.
Yeah. And so this is one of those pieces where you really want to pay attention and pull your energy field back in so that you don't have to participate in that journey.
This happens to me all the time. It's like I end up having people that are so needy and they're taking my energy away. And I'm just learning how to set boundaries.
Yeah.
And I had to tell this one person that I couldn't go out with her for coffee or something one day. And she goes, "Oh, I thought we were gonna be friends." And I said, "But I have a busy life and I have to schedule things. I can't just do things spur of the moment,
And that was a manipulation. Oh, I thought we were going to be friends. That was a
Thank
total
you.
manipulation. Yes.
Yes, I have that
A
pointed
real
out.
friend would say, "Oh, I understand. Let's pick another time." That's what a real friend would do.
Yes. So
Right?
I have
Now,
to
if you had
pretend.
canceled on her 6 times, that response would have been reasonable, but I'm pretty sure you didn't do that.
No.
Yeah.
But I have to
So,
watch that because I do I call it care, but I feel vibes and I feel that people need support or love or attention or advice or whatever. And then I get involved with someone that
right.
takes a little too much of my energy. So
So you open for a little coaching?
I think I might need some, yeah.
Are you open? Yeah, okay.
Oh, but
Because that's actually pretty common for people.
mm,
And what you're doing is you're making a contract with them because you're externally validating. So what you are saying is, "I will do for you and you will make me feel good about myself."
I
And then
see.
what ends up happening is inevitably you don't know that that's a contract you're making. They know it, but then you go to them when you need support and they look at you like you've lost your mind.
Oh
Like,
my,
that's not what we do. You do for me and I make you feel good about yourself. I don't do for you, right? And so then you feel completely unheld and unsupported in your life because you have been in a relationship with a taker who is there to make you feel good about yourself.
so true.
And you need to remove the takers in order to create a more healthy relationship with other people. But to do that, you have to stop looking for projects to make you feel good about yourself,
So true. You,
right?
you've got my number.
This is what I do. So,
Oh no, you got it. That's exactly it. So
yeah.
we have one more block we can
Okay.
do. That's
So
what.
you asked me about blocks. So, and I'm going to give you a block that is often one that I see, and it's a three-part block. Okay, it's not welcome, not wanted, not important. Okay, so the surface level is not welcome, middle level is not wanted, and root level is not important. And it's a feeling like you don't belong wherever you're supposed to be, like you're not welcome, like you don't have any way to fit in, all of this. And that nobody cares about you. That you care deeply about other people and nobody cares about you. And the root of this particular block, I'm going to give you a quick flip on this one.
Okay.
We train people to treat us in this way because we treat ourselves this way. And so when you feel like nobody thinks you're important in their lives, it's because you are the bottom of your own priority list. And you put everyone else first and you
Oh
sacrifice yourself on the altar of everyone else's happiness.
my gosh.
And therefore, everyone else treats you the way you treat yourself. And the way to fix it is to stop treating yourself that way. Put yourself at the top, not third or fourth, not sixth or seventh, the very top of your own priority list. Because if you don't, you're giving from your emptiness instead of from your overflow. And then people feel like they're a burden to you, even as you're trying to give to them.
You
Because
know,
they are.
you got my number. I'm telling you because like my husband with Parkinson's, and our family's all in Pennsylvania, and we're in Florida, and I was getting really burnt out. And my therapist said, you need to find someone to come and stay with him for a couple of
Yes.
days. And that was really hard because I said, oh my God, he's not going to do that. He's not going to do that. It has to be a family member. So our youngest daughter said, I'll come down for a few days. And I went on a 4-day cruise to Key West by myself, no friends, nobody. Oh, meditation, massage, exploration. I came back so different. I
Yeah.
was like free again, you know.
Yeah.
So that was September last year. So it's time to go again.
Yeah.
So February 17th, I will be going again.
Good for you.
But
And
yeah, that is because what you said, I was getting drained. He was feeling guilty.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, really, you hit me with all the blocks. So in your 50 years studying the spiritual and how our personal growth happens, what do you think the most like a big catalyst is for someone to open up their mind, their eyes, their soul, like just to say, oh, I'm supposed to be doing something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's different depending on the gender.
Oh,
Uh, Men have a tendency, and I want to preface this by saying I'm talking about like upper millennial and older men, not the newer generations, because the newer generations of men are much more like the females in regard to how they come into this work. But the upper level, upper aged men, they generally only come in when there's some major life disruption. So, divorce, loss of a job, retirement, kids leaving the nest, midlife crisis, massive car accident, death of a parent. They usually come in at some point because they tend to be more like blinders on, nose to the ground, grindstone, and just keep walking, walking, walking. And until something big hits them, they don't actually come up for air to realize that they're not happy and not whatever, right?
mhm.
Now, the younger men and women are more like they have a growing sense of dissatisfaction.
Mm.
And that growing sense of dissatisfaction results in the one question that takes them onto this path. And that question is, there's got to be more to life than this. What
Yeah.
is it? Right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And that steps them onto the spiritual path. And so they begin what I call the discovery phase, which is they start looking for any possible solution to their ennui, right? To their dissatisfaction, their existential angst. And they come into the spiritual world and they go, oh, is this it? Is this it? And they're checking different things and they finally find something and they're like, holy crap, this stuff really works. And then they enter the next phase, which is proof and proselytizing, which is this stuff really works. I must tell everyone I know and drag them out to classes with me so they don't think I'm nuts.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the proof and proselytizing phase. And then from there, they move into the prove it slash spiritual addiction phase, which
Oh,
is this is where I come into they saying, okay, it works for other people, but does it work for me? Right. And so now you're trying to figure out if you can make it work for you. And the spiritual addiction comes out of this desire to orient yourself to a world that you do not understand. And so
yes.
you begin consuming books like there's no tomorrow. You've got a stack of books next to your bed that are half read, and you pick up a random book and you read for a little bit and then you put it down. The same thing at your chair in your living room. There's just a million books. You're listening to 50 different podcasts. You're watching a million different YouTube videos. You're just consume, 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 consume. But that phase results in 2 to 5 years of losing your intentions to make a change in your life because you're so busy orienting. You go down these, ooh, angels, ooh, crystals, ooh, tarot cards, ooh,
Yes.
rabbit
Yes.
holes. And you're just like, ding, 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 ding. And the bright and shiny takes over, and you forget that you got here because you were unhappy and you wanted to be happier. And you're so distracted by the bright and shiny that
Yes.
you, on average, I see people have over the 50 years, I see people lose 2 to 5 years in this
Can
stage.
you avoid that? Is there a way to avoid that
Well,
part?
and that's why I designed my Spirit Sherpa podcast to it's specifically designed to walk people through that process in
Yes.
15 to 20 episodes if they binge it.
Good.
It's like,
Good.
it's like, okay, here's a whole bunch of information about a whole different bunch of different things. And don't forget that you're here because you were unhappy. So periodically I remind people, you're here because you were unhappy. You're here because you were unhappy. Don't get
Yeah.
distracted. Come back to the focus. The focus is this, because that stage is marked by looking for the magic pill to
Mm,
solve your problems. And so long as you continue to look for the magic pill, you will be stuck in that stage. It is
okay.
not until you admit that the magic pill is you.
Yeah. Right.
You are the magic pill. The solution is inside of you, not outside of you. The minute you make that belief structure shift, you
Mm,
step into stage 4, which is where you retreat to do your inner work. And
okay.
so a lot of people who started teaching in that stage 3 will pull back and do either a lot less teaching or they'll stop teaching altogether. And they just really go and do their inner work at that stage.
Yeah, because I belong to a spiritual community. It was called a church, and we don't call it a church anymore because it doesn't matter what religion people are. It's a spiritual
Right.
community. But there's so many people at different spiritual levels there, and you hear about chakras and the Akashic records and all these different things. And it's like I sit there and I think, I don't know a lot about all those things. I know a little bit, but then I start getting that feeling of, do I belong here? But I do because I really am trying to work on my inner self. So that's
Yes.
okay then, right? I don't have to
That's
know
entirely
everything.
yes. So
Oh,
here's
good.
the thing. Spiritual evolution only comes with personal evolution.
Okay.
And this is what so I'm one of the few places where people come and they work on both at the same time. There's a lot of people who teach the magic stuff, the spiritual stuff, whatever they want to call it. There's so many different words for it, but they teach all the energetics, right? And then there are people who teach personal growth. But transformation happens when you shift both at the same time, right? And so what I do is identity level work with people. I work on how they see themselves and then how they fit into the world around them, right? And so how do you see yourself? How do you see the world? How do you see your relationship to the world? And then how do you relate to the energetic world, which is part of the larger world, right? And so I'm working with people on not just adjusting their belief structures and their limiting beliefs and their thoughts, but also on how do you hold your energy field and how does that impact and how, a lot of us do a lot of the weird stuff that we do that is self-sabotaging because we feel unsafe.
Yeah.
And so the entirety of the first piece of work I do with people is all about finding safety, mental, emotional, and energetic safety. Because if you don't know how to protect your energy field, if you're holding your energy field out way too far and people are invading your energy field, it's impossible to feel safe no matter how much mental and emotional work you do. Feeling safe is not going to exist until you get your energy field to be sacrosanct,
Oh,
right?
yeah. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
So you
Yeah.
have to do both pieces of work at the same time because if you don't, so one of the blocks we didn't talk about is fear of your own power, right? And I see this a lot. Fear of your own power is a huge limiter of the ability to access your spiritual gifts. Because if you are afraid of your own power, you're not going to give yourself permission to be very good at your spiritual gifts.
Huh. And I think I might be approaching that too.
Yeah.
But that's just it. I was so overwhelmed with this idea of there's all these things. And I said, I can't learn about all these things. It's too much, you know. So
Yeah.
some things attract me, you know, meditation, mindfulness, uh, the chakras, you know, things like that. But I just, you know, somebody else will come to church and start talking about an entirely different type of thing. It's like, am I supposed to know that to like really be one of you guys? Because I don't know.
Yeah. You don't have to know. And in fact, depending upon who's talking to you,
Yeah.
they may not even know because, they've got this much knowledge and, there's like that much knowledge
Yeah.
to be had, right? So I've been to a bunch of different churches over the years, and one of the things that they love to do is send out positive intentions, for
Yes.
peace or whatever to different regions. And I'm like, you do realize that's black magic, right? And they're
Oh,
like, what? I'm like, you are purposefully inserting your intentions on someone else's life. That is black magic.
oh
It
wow.
doesn't matter that the intentions are positive, they are not intentions that were requested. They are intentions that you are setting for someone else's existence. You don't know if there is a purpose for them living in that space. You don't know. I mean, this is one of the things about spiritual work is that sometimes you've got to stub your toe to wake up to the fact that your environment is a problem. And if you don't get that message from stubbing your toe because somebody keeps you from stubbing your toe because they sent intentions, now the universe is going to whack you in the head and knock you on your butt. Or if you were at the knock you on your butt phase and they denied you that, you'll be in the hospital because the universe keeps giving you louder and louder messages until you get it. And
Yes.
so when you deny someone their message, then you're actively hampering their journey. And
Sure.
if they didn't ask for it, then you're hampering their journey and you're doing black magic on them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Unity Church?
Hmm.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
that's where I go. Unity of Palm Beaches. And as part of the service, we do a meditation, but it's not an intention, it's a meditation. And the idea is the fact that these 50 or 60 people for 5 minutes are quiet and just in a quiet, calm space. And that sends out, you know, the vibration of quiet and calm and
There's
peace.
nothing wrong with that.
And
That is
that's what I'm
just
saying.
you're
Yes.
holding your energy, you're
Hold our
allowed to go
space.
wherever it is called, and you're not intending to, impact someone in particular in a particular way. You're just, I am sharing my peace with the world, and that is, and you can take it or leave it. That is not black magic. That is healthy magic.
And
Okay.
the first time I went to this church, and I knew about it because of Marianne Williamson and Deepak Chopra, and you know they think Marianne Williamson, she might even be a unity minister.
I think she is. Yeah.
Yes, she is. And so the first time we went there, we were Catholic, my husband and I both.
Oh, that must have been a change.
Yeah, this is the best part, you know. So we weren't practicing, but still. And we're walking up the steps, and he says to me, "Oh, we're going to hell." I said, "Serious?" Oh, he's a dyed-in-the-wool Irish Catholic. And I said, "Don't be silly." And when we went in there and went to that service, it was so similar to how we felt in AA meetings. It was so similar. And I said, "Oh, yes." And now I'll tell you what, I go and I look around, and half the people there are in like 12 step meetings because they're about change. You know,
Yeah.
12 step is changing yourself and living a better life. And this church is too. So we found that. And how do we find that? It was meant to be, like the universe sent that. It was there on Flagler Avenue. And I was drawn there. And
Yeah.
I'm there now 20 years. I've been
Well,
there.
so interestingly, somebody
Yeah,
just yesterday told me, I haven't had a chance to check this, but I trust the source,
sure.
that the latest pope has said that all paths, all spiritual paths lead to God.
That is wonderful.
So tell your husband he's not going to hell.
Yeah, I told him that day. Well, that's it. I got divorced the first time. I had been married in a Catholic church, and so I got an annulment, and that was okay. It's fine. I got married the second time only because I wanted children. It's the only reason I married him. That was a horrible experience. But I hadn't married him in the Catholic Church. I married him in a Methodist church. So I divorced him. Now, like you said, the karma, whatever, the lesson that needed to be, the energy entwined, whatever it was, 10 years go by and the first husband comes around and we just will go boom like
Yep.
this, like magnets, you know. And we got married by a justice of the peace. All right. So now, after I divorced him, it's like he didn't change. I mean, he did not change. And I had changed a little. So I meet my present husband, who was a Catholic at the time. And when we told his family we were getting married, holy hell broke out.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. And like his father was, oh, she's divorced. And he said, yeah, but she got an annulment from her divorce. And he said, well, you have children and everything else. And he said, oh, no, I can get an annulment. He said, no, you can't. But he could get an annulment. And I knew the secret. And the secret is the Catholic Church, besides being paid to give it to you.
Yes.
Um, if you got married for the wrong reasons, they will give you an annulment.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
knowing that, like with my case, I wanted children. No, I didn't get married. So anyway, that was the story. So then after all of that, we had the civil ceremony, and then we got married in church to make his family happy.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
now I'm in a Catholic marriage.
So the funny thing, coming back to the 12 step stuff,
Yeah.
the interesting thing about the 12 step stuff, I can
Yeah.
speak really. My husband is 17 years sober. And so he and I have had a lot of conversations about this. One of the things that is, the 12 step process is hugely useful. However, it stops before a really important part, which is teaching. So, in the very first step, you have to stop looking at yourself as the be all end all of everything.
Right.
And what it doesn't do is bring you back around to loving yourself, because a lot of the journey is about acknowledging where you screwed up, your defects of character, right? And so, and that's important. Don't get me wrong. Super important. You have to walk through that stage. However, you also need to come back to loving yourself, or else you continue to end up in toxic relationships.
Then they go into service, helping
Yeah.
others.
Yeah,
That's
which is again, you're going to end up in that same dynamic that you and I talked about, not earlier, about
I was there.
surrounding yourself with takers,
I
right?
was there. I had sponsees and I had too many of them. And yeah, I did everything you said. I have to do all these things and listen to all your podcasts. This is wonderful. You have to come back though, because there's
I'd
too much.
love to.
I'd love to have you back. This is wonderful. And I learned a lot about myself.
I aim to please.
Yes. Well, you definitely confirmed a lot of things that I thought for sure. And that one thing you said and my writing is terrible when I'm taking notes.
I understand. I've been death gripping things this entire conversation, and half of
I'm
them
just
just sort of wandered off.
I'm just gonna go. listen to your podcast, and I'm gonna have you back again. And anybody that hears this podcast is gonna get a lot out of it, I could tell.
Oh.
So
Well, and I have a book that lays out all of
go for it.
the blocks, right?
Let's
So
do
all
that.
of these spiritual wounds that we're talking about. It's called The Overachiever's Guide to Spiritual Awakening.
And I'm gonna write that
And
nice and
yeah,
slow.
it's available on my website.
So
Um,
overachiever's guide. I got that. Okay,
Overachiever's Guide to Spiritual Awakening.
that's
I'll
very
get you a link to it. You can put it in the show notes.
I am going to put it in the show notes and I am going to listen to your podcast.
Yeah.
And, you really helped me a lot today, to tell you the truth.
Well, I'm happy to have been of
Yeah.
service.
Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing. And you know what? Did I pronounce your name? I said Kelly. Is it Kelly or
It
Kelly?
is Kelly. My mother was phonetically stupid. I can't help it. No, she was actually an English teacher. She knew exactly what she was doing. But
Yeah.
oddly, when I Googled my name, like, I don't know, 15 years ago,
Yeah.
what I found is that everybody who spelled their name my way, they were all doing spiritual work in the world, which
See?
was
Oh my
really
God. Yeah. The
isn't that interesting.
synchronicities are everywhere. They really
Yeah,
are. So thank you so much for sharing your incredible journey and insights with us today, and your dedication to helping others through
my pleasure.
spiritual and business coaching. That's inspiring, really is. And I'm sure our audience benefited from your wisdom and experience today. And we look forward to seeing you again.
I
Yeah.
would love that.
So thank you again for your time, Kelly.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me, Mimi.
Oh, it was a pleasure.